He was a billionaire just seconds away from signing the biggest deal of his life until a housemaid dropped to her knees and begged him not to leave the house. Why would a maid risk everything to stop her boss from attending a business meeting? What did she see that no one else could? What happened next not only exposed a shocking betrayal, but also saved a man from losing his fortune and his life. This isn't just a story about business or marriage. It's a powerful lesson about intuition, hidden enemies, and the quiet voices we often ignore. Stay with us as we uncover a true-to-life tale that proves sometimes the people we overlook are the very ones sent to protect us. Because in a world full of masks, only truth can set you free, and it doesn't always come from where you expect. What if the person you always ignored turned out to be the only one trying to save your life? Chief Silas Adeyemo, billionaire real estate mogul, stood at the edge of his marble-floored hallway, car keys in hand, seconds away from leaving for the most important business meeting of his life. But right there, blocking his path, was someone no one ever took seriously: Dupe, the housemaid. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't being dramatic. She was trembling. On her knees. Red-eyed. Palms pressed together as if praying to something bigger than him. "Please, sir. Don't go today," she whispered. Silas blinked, stunned by the desperation in her voice. She wasn't asking for a favor. She was begging like her life depended on it, or maybe his. Her words spilled out, choked by fear. She had seen him in a dream, wearing the same suit, stepping into his Lexus, and never returning. There was blood, screams, a sense of doom. Silas, a man not given to superstition, stood frozen. It did something to him. Because no one, not Mariah, not Toby, not anyone in his business circle had ever spoken with that kind of emotional honesty to him in years. And so, for reasons he couldn't explain, Silas turned away, dropped his car keys, canceled the meeting, and sat down in silence. That decision saved his life. The very car he was supposed to enter was involved in a horrific accident minutes later. Same time, same road. The driver survived barely. But had Silas been in the car, he would have died. Sometimes warnings don't come from prophets or boardrooms. Sometimes they come from the quietest voice in the room, the one we almost didn't hear. That morning, Chief Silas realized something life-changing: true loyalty doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears slippers and carries a mop. They say dreams are just the mind playing tricks. But what if a dream could actually save your life? Silas had barely settled into the living room when his phone buzzed again. The first call had been from Toby, angry and confused about his absence from the Billionaire investor meeting. But the second call sent chills down his spine. It was his office secretary, her voice shaky, almost breaking. "Sir? It's your driver, Sagan. There's been an accident. 3rd Mainland Bridge. A truck lost control. Hit your Lexus." Silas sat upright, his heart thundering. "What did you say?" he asked, though the words had already tattooed themselves on his mind. His car had somersaulted, crushed. Sagan was unconscious in the hospital. Everyone assumed Silas had been inside. For a full minute he couldn't speak, couldn't move. The exact car, the exact road, the exact time. It was everything Dupe had described in her trembling voice just hours earlier. Her dream, the one his wife had called nonsense, had come true, down to the blood and screams she had whispered about. Silas stared at the marble floor beneath him, feeling it pulse beneath his feet like a heartbeat. He had brushed off plenty of strange things in his life. But this wasn't just strange. It was real, tangible, undeniable, and it had spared him from death. If he hadn't hesitated, if he had ignored Dupe's trembling hands and pleading voice, he might not be breathing right now. Upstairs, Mariah appeared again, phone in hand, irritation still etched on her face. "You're just sitting here all day," she scoffed. Silas looked at her, really looked, and for the first time saw how cold she was. No worry, no fear, just annoyance. "There was an accident," he said quietly. "My car's gone." She barely blinked. So accidents happen every day in Lagos. That response broke something small inside him. Because even if she didn't love him, even if their marriage had become a showroom of smiles and silence, he still expected her to care whether he lived or died. But she didn't. Not even a flicker of concern. Dupe, on the other hand, the maid they all ignored, had felt it. She had seen it. She had stood in his way and refused to let him walk into death. And that kind of loyalty couldn't be bought or demanded. It had to be earned. Or maybe divinely sent. That night, Silas lay awake listening to the quiet hum of the air conditioner and the louder noise of his own thoughts. He couldn't explain what happened, but he knew one thing with terrifying clarity: Dupe's warning didn't just save his life, it awakened something inside him that had been dead for years. And from that moment on, he decided he would never ignore the quiet voice of truth again. What hurts more, being betrayed by your enemies or by the ones you trusted with your life? To the world, Chief Silas Adeyemo had it all: the money, the mansion, the $1 million smile. His wife Mariah looked like she'd walked out of a luxury magazine. His best friend and business partner Toby was the life of every party and the face of their booming real estate empire. But behind the elegance and polished smiles, something was rotting. Slowly. Quietly. And Silas, so busy building fortunes and silencing doubts, had missed the smell. He had loved Mariah once fiercely, sincerely. She had walked into his life on a quiet afternoon, asking whether navy blue matched gray in a high-end furniture store. He remembered thinking she was the most radiant woman he'd ever seen. But what began as chemistry and comfort curdled into coldness. Mariah didn't want a partner. She wanted a lifestyle. The gym was untouched. The chef was on speed dial, and housemaids fired like candles after a party. Silas tried to talk. Once. She shut him down. "This is my home. I choose who stays." After that, he never spoke up again. Just worked harder, stayed out longer, came home to silence wrapped in perfume. And then there was Toby, the man he built an empire with. From a cramped office in Yaba with one laptop and no air conditioning, they rose to signing billion-naira deals in Banana Island. Silas was the quiet strategist, Toby the charismatic rainmaker. Their friendship was famous, their chemistry unstoppable. But while Silas calculated risk, Toby chased rewards, even the forbidden ones. The betrayal didn't happen in a single moment. It grew over years, tucked behind champagne toasts and fake loyalty. Mariah stopped looking at Silas like a husband. Toby stopped treating him like a brother. And yet Silas kept trusting, not because he was naive, but because he believed in them. Because when you give people your whole heart, you never expect them to trade it for convenience. Then came the cracks, subtle things. The way Mariah's eyes shifted whenever Dupe was near. The way Toby changed the subject when certain contracts came up. And Silas, once blind, was now watching. He didn't confront. Not yet. He observed. Until the day truth didn't whisper anymore, it screamed. A hotel, room 406, one moment of truth that shattered a lifetime of trust. Mariah, Toby, together, laughing in a robe and scrolling like they hadn't planned a man's destruction. Silas didn't cry. He didn't curse. He just looked. And left. Not because he was weak, but because he was finally awake. That day, something inside him broke. But it was the kind of break that sets you free. The kind that makes you rebuild, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Because the worst betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people who said they loved you while sharpening the knife. And from that day on, Chief Silas promised himself one thing: never again would he confuse presence with loyalty or silence with peace. Sometimes the most dangerous decisions don't come with flashing red lights. They come disguised as routine paperwork. It had only been days since the accident, the one Silas narrowly escaped thanks to Dupe's haunting warning. And just as the tension in his chest was beginning to settle, she spoke again. Quietly. Carefully. Like someone passing a message she had no business knowing. While clearing plates in the dining room, she bent down as if picking up a napkin and whispered, "Sir, please, Don't sign anything this week. Silas paused mid-swipe on his tablet. Why, he asked, eyebrows raised. Dupe didn't look up. Her voice dropped even lower. I had another dream, and this one was clearer than before. You signed some documents, and then everything collapsed. She said he'd lose his company, his accounts would be frozen, he'd be handcuffed. She didn't say it to scare him. She said it because she knew. Silas didn't ask more. Mariah had just walked in. That night, Silas didn't sleep. He didn't sign. Instead, he called in a favor. A trusted friend in finance. What came back chilled him to the core. Toby had been funneling company money into offshore accounts for years under fake project names. Carefully disguised theft. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a setup. Had Silas signed those documents, he would have been the one holding the bag while Toby disappeared with the money. Dupe hadn't just warned him again. She had stopped his entire life from unraveling. With one whisper and a quiet conviction, she had given him something no one else had the chance to choose: caution over chaos. For the first time in years, Silas realized that danger doesn't always wear a gun or a threat. Sometimes it wears a handshake and a smile. And sometimes salvation doesn't roar, it whispers. And so he made a silent vow from this day forward he would never ignore the quiet again. Especially when it came from her. The worst kind of betrayal isn't when your enemies strike, it's when the people sleeping beside you are sharpening the knife. It didn't happen in a courtroom or a business meeting. It happened in a quiet hotel hallway. Room 406. Silas stood at the door holding a spare key handed to him after 2 crisp bundles of Nara convinced the receptionist to look away. He didn't knock, he didn't breathe, he just opened the door, and there they were. Toby shirtless, lounging on the couch like a man with no secrets. Mariah, his wife, wrapped in a white hotel robe, holding a glass of red wine that trembled in her hand the second she saw him. The air froze. Eyes widened. And all the lies they had lived for years shattered in silence. Silas didn't raise his voice. He didn't throw anything. He didn't ask why. Because he already knew. He had known. For weeks, something had been crawling beneath the surface of his life, a quiet dread that started when Dupe begged him not to leave that morning. And now everything made sense. Toby tried to speak. It's not what you think. Mariah tried to lie. You were never really there for me. But Silas wasn't there for a debate. He was there for the truth. And the truth was standing in front of him, half-dressed, drenched in deception, and finally exposed. You married me for access, he said, voice low but unshakable. And you, he turned to Toby, betrayed the only brother you had. But what broke him most wasn't the affair. It was the plan behind it. Days later, as Silas investigated quietly, the layers peeled back like rotting wallpaper. Dupe had been right about everything. Toby and Mariah hadn't just cheated, they had plotted. The car accident wasn't fate, it was arranged. The delays, the financial traps, the manipulation, all designed to eliminate him and take everything he built. And every time they tried to strike, Dupe had warned him, pulled him back, and stopped the blood from spilling. Mariah wasn't crying. She wasn't sorry. She was angry that she'd been caught, furious that the girl she wanted fired had ruined the plan. She's a curse, Mariah told Toby on the phone one night, unaware Silas was already listening in from the hallway. She watches us. She knows things. We have to get rid of her. That's when Silas knew. Not just that he had married the wrong woman or trusted the wrong friend, but that his survival had been nothing short of a miracle. Dupe hadn't just saved him. She had been the only thing standing between him and destruction. So he did what any man should do when the mask comes off. He called his lawyer, filed for divorce, froze every shared account, started the process to buy out Toby's shares. The man who once trusted blindly was now seeing everything with frightening clarity. And from that day forward, Silas stopped measuring loyalty by years of friendship or the number of smiles at dinner tables. He started measuring it by who stood by him when the fire came, and who lit the match. Some people walk into your life like storms, destructive and loud. But the ones who save you, They come like whispers and leave just as quietly. The mansion was quiet again, but not the comforting kind of quiet. It was the kind that echoed: empty walls, full closets, cold marble floors that mocked every memory. Silas stood in the living room staring at nothing in particular when Dupe walked in. No tray in her hand, no broom. Just herself, calm, composed, and carrying the kind of presence that said more than words ever could. "I'm leaving tomorrow," she said softly. Silas looked up surprised, but not shocked. Something in his gut told him this moment would come. Why, he asked, his voice brittle. She didn't hesitate. "Because my assignment here is over." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. Assignment. Like she was sent. Like this was never about the job or the paycheck. And in a way, it wasn't. She had arrived like a shadow and stayed like light. She didn't fix the marriage. She didn't restore the company. She saved the man. "You don't have to go," Silas said, his voice cracking ever so slightly. "You're the only one who hasn't hurt me." She smiled, not with pity, but with peace. "That's why I must leave. I wasn't sent to stay. I was sent to save." Those words struck deep, like the final note of a song you didn't know you needed until it stopped playing. As she walked away, Silas didn't chase her. He just stood in the doorway, watching the one person who had truly seen him, really seen him, disappear down the hall with quiet dignity. There were no dramatic goodbyes, no hugs, no promises, just a knowing that she had left behind something stronger than love. Clarity. That night, the house felt like a museum of a life he no longer recognized. Wedding photos, designer furniture, echoes of lies. He sat in the dark with a framed photo of him and Mariah smiling on their wedding day. 5 seconds. That's how long he looked at it before smashing it against the floor. The glass broke, the lie shattered, and all that remained was a man cut, bruised, awake. What followed was a full year of silence. Not the suffocating silence of betrayal, but the healing kind. Silas poured himself into Crestrock, rebuilding from the ground up. He fired everyone tied to Toby, hired hungry young minds, refused shady deals, and most importantly, he redefined success. No more headlines, no more pretending. He began walking again, smiling again, eating again, slowly, quietly, until one evening under the stars, love returned, not loud, not shiny, but gentle. A woman who didn't care about his last name or the zeros in his account. She cared about books, children, truth, and that was enough. Silas would never forget Dupe. He didn't need to, because the lesson she left behind still lived in him. Peace isn't the absence of pain, it's the presence of truth. She wasn't just a maid, she was the reckoning. And wherever she went, secrets didn't survive. Far from the polished gates of Crestrock Mansion, on a quieter street lined with weary trees and cracked pillars, a black car pulled up in front of a fading duplex. There was no luxury guardhouse, no scented candles or polished marble, just a house with too many arguments echoing in its walls, and a woman who had cried herself to sleep for weeks. The doorbell rang. The tired wife opened the door, her eyes swollen, her voice thin. "Are you the lawyer?" she asked, barely hiding the desperation in her tone. The visitor smiled softly, her face calm. "No, I'm the housemaid." Dupe had returned, but not to Silas, not to the past. She had entered a new home, another battlefield, another story where the truth was drowning beneath the surface of routine denial and pain. Inside this home was a man successful on the outside, emotionally bankrupt on the inside. Because Dupe wasn't just a housemaid. She was a mirror, a warning, a test. And when she arrived, two things always followed: endings and beginnings. The kind that cracked foundations but planted new seeds. The kind that hurt before they healed. So, as she unpacked her small bag and tied her scarf back neatly, the wife watched her closely. There was something about her that felt different from the others. like peace had finally stepped through the door, like maybe she wasn't alone anymore, and somewhere deep inside in the quiet part of her heart that still dared to hope, the woman whispered to herself, "Maybe this time I'll be seen. Maybe this time the truth will finally win." Because where dupe enters, pretending ends, and truth begins. Truth. In Silas's mansion, she had done the unthinkable, interrupted a billion-dollar meeting with a dream, a whisper that saved a life, and exposed two betrayals so deeply embedded even Silas hadn't dared to suspect them. But after her mission was complete, she left. No drama, no farewell party, just a quiet declaration: I wasn't sent to stay, I was sent to save. And now she was on another doorstep, another broken home, another family swallowed by secrets. The woman who answered the door had no idea what was about to happen. No idea that the stranger she was letting in would become the key to unlocking years of buried pain. But Dupe never came to seek comfort. She came to confront the silence that had been killing people from the inside out. Because betrayal doesn't always wear lipstick. It doesn't always shout. Most of the time, it hides behind routine and phone calls taken in the hallway, in fake smiles at the dinner table, in the way someone avoids your eyes when you ask them a direct question. And Dupe knew how to find it. Not with accusations, but with presence. Her calm made people nervous. Her quiet made liars uneasy. In every home she entered, something cracked. Sometimes it was the illusion of a perfect marriage. Sometimes it was a legacy built on lies. But always, always the truth came out. Not to destroy but to cleanse, not to shame but to free. Dupe was not a servant. She was a symbol. A reminder that when truth finally enters the room, it doesn't scream. It just stands there, patient, undeniable, unafraid. And so, wherever she went, families changed. Not because she demanded it, but because her very presence forced them to face what they had long avoided. In a world full of pretenders and manipulators, Dupe was something terrifyingly rare, a woman with nothing to gain and everything to reveal. And that more than any threat is what made her unstoppable. Sometimes in life, the greatest dangers don't come from strangers, but from those we trust the most. This story reminds us that silence often hides betrayal, and loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. In a world obsessed with appearances, titles, money, and charm, we must learn to see with the heart, not just the eyes. The maid had no wealth, no influence, yet she had something more powerful: truth, intuition, and courage. For those of us in our later years, this story is a gentle reminder to listen to the quiet voices, our instincts, our dreams, our inner warnings, and not ignore them simply because they come wrapped in simplicity. It's also a call to reevaluate who we surround ourselves with. Are they bringing peace or poisoning our path? As we grow older, peace becomes more valuable than success. And peace only exists where truth lives. So protect your heart. Trust wisely. And remember, sometimes the one who kneels to warn you is the very one heaven sent to save you.